of his mouth.
I just spat coffee everywhere.
All over your beautiful microphones and
Oh my
computer.
God. Okay.
I was just trying to crack my peanut.
All right. All right. Okay.
I'm sorry. Gonna have to recover from that.
Okay. All right. Can I welcome? What? Well, do you want to welcome us?
Hi, welcome to this week's episode of Your Queer Story with your host, Samantha Taylor, the best wife that Evan Jones has ever had.
Well, that's true. That is fair. Not the best husband I've ever had, but the best wife I've ever had. And this is Evan Jones, and Paul has ditched us to go to DragCon for some reason. But that's okay because we have 4 people here today, 2 beautiful guests, and of course my lovely wife who is shoving a boiled peanut in her mouth as we speak. And just keeping the romance alive. So with us today, we have my sisters Deanna.
Hello.
And my sister Katie.
Hello.
And my wife, as you heard.
Hey. So this week, with Paul being at DragCon, we've decided to take a different direction. And I am always begging Evan to do some personal pieces on this podcast rather than all of the history. And so this week, we're going to delve into Evan's background and talk to his sisters about leaving a cult.
Leaving a cult, yeah. And we will be back next week for our regular podcast. The last 2 episodes have been, last week and this week have been interviews. Good stuff. If you haven't heard the episode with Vima on being an ally to people of color, you should. But and then we've got the interview this week, and then next week we're going to be back and we're going to be talking about polyamory and getting kinky on episode 69. So
I
hang in there.
cannot wait to listen to that.
Exactly. It's interesting because we have my sister Deanna, who is a hardcore fan.
Yes. Woo!
We have my wife Samantha, who only begrudgingly listens to the episodes and not even all of them. And then we have my sister Katie, who has never heard a single episode.
That's because Evan won't let me.
That's not true. You are welcome to. They're on all platforms. Hey, we're on Pandora now, guys. So if you want to listen on Pandora, you can do that.
Oh, I'm going to have to do that because I like Pandora.
All right. So go ahead, honey. You want to take over. She's like, I want to take over. I'm going to be in charge. Are you going to let me be in charge, Evan? And now all she's doing is eating
Boiled peanuts.
Doing is eating peanuts.
Shut up. Okay.
All right.
Okay, so we're going to start by asking a big question that some people may not know, and that is, what is the IFB?
I know that obviously I know what the IFB is, but I'm sure there's a very technical definition that Evan probably could explain a little bit better, hopefully. I don't know.
Do you remember the Baptist distinctives from college?
Oh, shit.
There's one as Priesthood of the Believer is the P because they did the B-A.
Oh, they did
the Baptist. Yeah.
Oh,
and then
one
A is like authority. But it is in like detail. Like they basically teach us who we are.
Is it brethren maybe first?
Yeah.
Brethren.
Assholes. I don't pedophiles.
Yeah. We can
I
get
don't know. Trans haters.
One of them is like
ignorant,
tithes and offerings or something. Like that.
sadists.
Of course it's tithes
Right,
and offerings.
right.
Of course
Tithes
it
and
is.
offerings. Yeah. So I mean, I don't have the. I mean, of course, there's the term that the IFB, Independent Fundamental Baptists, have for themselves, and of course, there's like reality. But if you want to know more about the history of the IFB, if you're from the IFB, if you're from a similar cult, so it's very hard to prove the IFB is a cult because it's a string of thousands of churches that are all independent. And some churches really are just independent churches. They're just independent fundamental Baptist church. They do their thing. They mind their business.
I think the one point to make is that it's the fundamentalist part that really separates them from Baptists and even independent Baptists. Because I know like people who are independent Baptists, they're independent from maybe the Southern Baptist Convention or the American Baptist Convention. Those things, they're just independent, but they're not fundamentalist. And that's the part that makes it the cult, the fundamentalist part, not the independent or the Baptist. It's the fundamentalist part.
Anytime you get into fundamentalism, no matter what religion it is, when you find the fundamental. I mean, ISIS is fundamentalism of Islam.
Right.
Like anytime you get into the fundamentalists, people are like, we're getting down to the basics. That just really means that they're isolationists, they're exclusionists, and they're fucking batshit crazy, and they think that everyone else isn't being extreme enough.
Well, but even the independent part is humorous because they're not. Right.
Right.
Like they all care what every other church thinks about them. They're not independent at all. They're a big group.
Yeah,
It's
well,
like multiple.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
If they were independent, then they wouldn't be able to move priests from one church
Right.
to another when
Pastors.
there was a scandal.
After they rape one
Pastors,
person.
not priest,
yeah.
you Catholic. But she's right. She's right. though.
Right. Yeah, you're definitely right. Yeah.
No, she's right though, because so that's what I mean. Like if you look at it on paper, it looks like it's hard to track. But when you really break it down and you start following the movements, you see a few distinct leaders emerge in fundamentalist history and in current history. And
I mean, fundamentalism as
I didn't take a yes up. What?
fundamentalism in general is a lot about keeping separate.
Yeah.
So being separate is really something they pride themselves in, is separating themselves from the world, being everyone else that's not inside their church.
Yeah. Or
so
their brand.
Or their brand, right? So separating you from your family that isn't in, separating you from your coworkers who aren't in, those type of things. That's also what makes independent fundamental Baptist a cult, is the separation.
Well, and like I said, when you really check it down, you can name who the leaders are in the IFB. So when you break it down, you can really see who the leaders are. So there are leaders, there are churches that have a say and they have a pull, and the way that they lead and they control is through isolation. So if you've decided you're not going to follow, say, leader Jack Hyles, Bob Jones, John R. Rice, what's his name? If you go back further in history, William Jennings Bryan or J. Frank Norris, then you, if you decide you're not going to follow those leaders, all of a sudden you find yourself very isolated as a church. And when you're only about 20 people in the middle of nowhere, that becomes lonely. That becomes hard. You can't fund your church anymore because you're not getting outside resources. Your name's not getting built. You're not getting what you need. And then these churches close their doors. So that's how they maintain control, is through isolation.
So I actually have the Baptist distinctives and what we were taught. So is that an acronym?
Mm-hmm.
A side note, Evan, Katie, and Deanna all grew up very much going to this church. I feel like that was not said.
Well, and schools.
Yeah, you're right.
Schools from kindergarten on, and also college.
Well, we can get to the history. We were just trying to find the IFB, but you're
I
right.
didn't want to get too far into it, and then
Okay.
hold on now.
But so it's biblical authority is the B. A is autonomy of the local church. P is priesthood of the believer. T is two ordinances, communion / baptism. I is individual soul liberty. S is separation of church and state. T is two offices, pastor and deacon. And S is saved church membership.
Well, that's just boring as fuck.
Wow.
Right. But
but yeah, that's
Ridiculous, yeah.
but in order to be a Baptist, you have to believe all of those things and all that.
So now that we know that what the IFB is, the Independent Fundamental Baptist, how have you three been tied to it? What was your experience growing up? Did you find the church?
Well, we were in it from birth, I guess you could say. I know I can speak for both my parents. They were also in it from birth. My grandfather on both sides is a pastor, or both were pastors. My one grandfather's passed away, but he was a pastor and an evangelist. And I know he started it on that side of the family because he grew up Jewish. So he started it, and then my dad, and then down to me. So it was from the nursery of the hospital to the nursery of the church. So
Yeah.
I was born into it. My dad was a pastor of an independent fundamental Baptist church.
And so yeah, we are all siblings, but we were related later in life. So like when Katie's saying her dad, she means our father, and then Deanna was talking about her father, who is our stepfather.
Right. We're a blended family.
Yeah.
But so we were born, right into skirts, and which is what they believe, that women should wear skirts full time. Even for a while, they believed even like pajamas were dresses and gowns.
Yeah. Even what you wore to bed at night had to be modest.
Anyway, but so yes, I was born into it. I still am a Christian. I believe in God and all of that, but I don't believe at all the independent fundamental Baptist way. That's hard to say.
Yeah, the IFB. That's why we say the IFB.
That's why we say IFB, right?
Okay, I'm going to do that.
I was going to say, so if you for our particular brand, so we were the affiliates of Jack Hyles. So when you trace the IFB in the history, you can see, again, different, what we sometimes call the godfathers of the IFB. So there's men who, like Bob Jones University down in North Carolina, like that is considered a hub of IFB. You've got Pensacola Christian College down in Florida, I believe. That's considered a hub of the IFB. Out on the West Coast, you've got Golden State Bible Baptist College. That's a hub.
And you have West Coast as well.
And you have West Coast Baptist College. And then the North, like Midwest, there was Hyles Anderson College, run by a man named Jack Hyles, who died about 20 years ago. And he was our leader. So he was the one that had the cult leader that had a lot of influence on our life. And again, when you go to individual churches, you might find that they're not as culty. But when you get in these hubs, they are very much a cult. And you can tell from the abuse and the manipulation.
Well, and you can even go to a church and not realize how culty it is until a few years down the road, and you're like, oh crap, this is
well, that's the thing
up.
about a cult. Nobody walks in and says, oh, this is a cult, I think I'm going to join.
Right.
Everybody walks in and thinks, wow, look at this new way that they're thinking. These people are so happy and they're so energetic. I want what they have, because that's what cults do. They sell themselves, and that's why people join cults.
Well, and if you've been in it your whole life and then you get to another place and you're like, oh, well, maybe they're just a little extreme in this area. I can accept it, but whatever. And you don't think about it because you've been brainwashed your whole life. So then you're like, we're not supposed to think.
Right.
We're not supposed to think for ourselves.
We don't think for ourselves.
Right.
No, we let the man of God think for us.
They tell us what to do and think.
So can each of you give about maybe a 5-minute rundown of your experience growing up in the IFB, and that's it.
So this is Deanna. I'll start. So, I mean, pretty much didn't know any different. So, but when I was 4 years old, my parents got divorced, and which was definitely not something that you did in the IFB, but it happened.
It's very frowned upon.
Right. It happened, and the leadership basically fought for my dad, and so we lived with him. He got custody, and that's a whole other podcast.
Right, but can you just say, like, that goes to, like, the cult where, like, your dad stayed in the IFB, your mom was trying to get out. That's what she was doing.
Yeah, my mom was trying to get out
of the
IFB.
IFB.
She was trying to get out of the IFB, and because she was doing that, they basically had people lie and go to court and sign affidavits that made it like she abandoned us kids, and so she lost custody of us, and my dad had full custody, and he was praised in the church for raising 4 kids on his own and writing a book and all of that stuff.
But it was all based on lies,
but it was
and
all
just power.
Right, based on lies, right. Basically just, I mean, life was life. I didn't really know until it was probably 7 the first time I remember vividly my mom getting me a pair of shorts overalls, and I didn't know I was probably actually in second or third grade because I was not doing cheerleading in school, but I remember wearing those and then telling my grandma who lived with us, that I wore them, and her just like breaking down crying and just telling me like, I can't believe you did that. You signed up. You can't be a cheerleader if you wear shorts. And that was very important. Like we didn't have much. And so that was very important. So I decided not to do that. And my mom took us to the movies a couple of times, and that never went over well. And so we just basically decided that I personally decided that I wasn't going to do that. I was going to be the rule follower. I mean, at a young age, at 7, 8 years old, decided that, you know, I was going to follow all of the rules and do everything that they said. Because one, I didn't want to disappoint my dad or my leaders, which is very important in the IFB. And also I didn't want to, I just didn't want to do anything wrong. And so I did that. And I did that all the way through middle school, junior high, and through high school.
All in a school run by the church.
All in a school run by the church, right. I did go to my mom's every other weekend. And, there were times in my life that, I would listen to bad music.
Which was just regular music.
Right, which was just like country most of the time. But I learned, like, I would ask, I would ask my leaders, like, what am I supposed to do? It's my mom. I can't tell her not to play it because she is an adult. But what am I supposed to do? And they would tell me, well, just think about hymns in your mind and block out those songs so you don't have to hear them. And that's what I did. But there was definitely times in my life where I would listen, and then there was times I'd get right with God and not listen or not watch TV or whatever I was supposed to do. But I did have a little bit of a reprieve going over there. But I also was very committed to the church. And when I was a senior in high school and I graduated, I won the award for the best IFB kid. I bet they've scratched my name off by now, I hope. But I won the award for the best IFB kid and got a free year scholarship to their college. And I did that. I went for a year. It was just, I don't know, it was a lot of faking. Looking back now, then I didn't realize, but looking back now, I realized how unhappy I was. And also how much I faked my life, how much of what I did every single day was fake. It's easy, right? Hindsight is 20/20, but when you're in it, you think you're doing everything the way that you should be and you're supposed to.
You think you're doing it the way you want to.
Yeah, you think it's your choice, right, for sure. And I definitely know now that it was never my choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kate. So it's really interesting that we have three of us and we have three different perspectives on this. So what was your experience, Kate?
Okay. Well, I like I said, I was born into the IFB, and then our dad passed away. So after that happened, we were moved from South Carolina, like away from all of our family that basically raised us because our dad was so sick for a while, So we were kind of ripped away from them, which was very, I think, hurt us all. But Jack Hiles had offered our mom a job at the Christian school as a teacher, and they had gone, both of my parents had gone to the Hiles college and graduated from there and all that. So we were put in the grade school there, or the elementary school.
Yeah.
Right. And then I went from elementary, junior high, high school.
Kindergarten, right? You were
kindergarten. Yeah, yes, I was kindergarten. Yeah. So, elementary school, I didn't really think about anything, like nothing really shocked me that was like wrong. But then junior high, I started dealing with my dad's death a lot more. And I was kind of like shocked at how it was handled because, well, my mom got remarried to Deanna's dad. And so our families merged when I was 6. So, we were all a big family, big happy family. And Sarcasm.
A merging that was very much orchestrated by Hiles.
Right. Like it was orchestrated in such a weird way that it's weird to
creepy
talk
way.
about. Because like when my dad was in the hospital, he sent Dan to my dad's church.
Yeah.
No, he had just died. He was like
had
2
just
weeks.
died.
He had died 2 weeks ago or something, and he sent him to the church to check out my mom. I guess. I don't know.
Fresh new widow.
So, and then conveniently we moved like 5 months later,
Left our entire family.
Yeah.
We didn't know.
Entire
we didn't know-
family.
I mean, my mom knew a few people up north from being,
Right.
being in school, but
just
we
friends, but
Yeah.
no family.
Our entire family lived in South Carolina, and we moved them all from South Carolina to Indiana, which is from one end of the country to the other.
Right. Which the timing is crazy because, he died in February of 96. We moved in August or maybe July because
July.
school started in August
It was July
of 96, like months later. And then Dan and Janice started dating
the
in
next February.
97, like literally a year right after my dad died.
I should say that I've heard Janice brag about that she waited an entire year after her husband passed away to date.
I am married and I can't even imagine. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. I don't. It's a complicated thing because
Right.
you know that Hiles was pushing and organizing,
Right.
and she had spent a long time watching her husband die. But anyways, the whole thing is we got merged together.
Right. So anyway, we got merged. And so anyway, I was kind of in junior high, things started hitting me as far as like how the death of my father was handled, because we weren't allowed to have pictures of him. We didn't really speak about him. The only person that spoke about him was his mom, my father's mom, which, she's amazing. Just to throw that in there. But so anyway, that was our only like outlet for him. So then that kind of just starts affecting you. So then you start thinking more like, why, like who handles things like that? What kind of people and all that. So I started getting close to one of the teachers at the junior high, and really, I mean, she was kind of a really, really good person in general. Like, yes, she was in the IFB, but she was like one of those people that was like good, like a good person.
Well, there's a lot of good people.
Oh, yeah.
That's what attracts people, right? They think that they're going to become better.
Yeah,
people
and she was
help
there to
others.
help the kids in school and all that. So, and she really did. But I would not have made it through those years without her. But in high school, I was going astray, as they would call it. And then
Which just means asking questions.
right. Well, I was, listening to music and all of that stuff.
Being a normal, typical teenager.
Right. But then my best friend died. So then it was a big, huge, like, it was almost like they played on her death as far as like, let's have a revival because all these kids' hearts are broken. Like.
Right. They're vulnerable.
Right.
That's how Hiles got mom to move up
Exactly.
to Indiana, because she was in a vulnerable place. Tell her to leave. These kids are in a vulnerable place. One of their own has died. Now
Yeah.
we pounce.
And then you get, you kind of get sucked in even more because you're like, it's like whenever somebody dies, you think, okay, and you love that person. You're like, okay, that person believed this way. So that's obviously right. And like, I want to be like that person. Yeah. Like I don't know. It does something to you. So then I was like, oh, I need to. And she had written down in her Bible, because we always had to carry a Bible to classes in the high school. But she had written down in her Bible that she wanted to pray for me because I was going astray. So she was a very good person, but that's how we were taught. But, so anyway, so I wanted to be like her. So then that was my junior year. So my senior year, I was very much like Bible all the way. I went to like prayer meetings and all that stuff. And even Evan, challenged me in those days. When I was going astray, Evan was worried about me and told me that he would take me to the batting cages if I would listen to this high up IFB woman's basically like tapes. Back in the day was tapes. So that way I could, and if I read my Bible every day, then I would get to go to the batting cages with Evan.
Sorry, I was trying to save you from the pits of hell.
Well, it's just how much like we were both in it, you know? Like, it's just crazy. So anyway, we went, so she did, wait, let me get my thoughts here. Hold on, Paul.
She died. You got closer to God.
Right.
Year,
You went to college.
Right. So I wasn't going to go to Hiles before she died, but then...
Hiles Anderson College.
Right. Hiles Anderson College. Right. I wasn't going to go there, but, you know, she died and I got all right with God and all that stuff. And I did end up going on a missions trip, which really is kind of like a play on kids' emotions, like take them to the foreign field and see all these people living. I mean, it's like horrendous conditions. And so then you feel bad and, you know, we're supposed to witness to them and
save the lost.
Right.
Witnessing is when you talk about God and try to save their soul.
Right, right.
And of course, Christians in other countries don't count unless they've been saved by us. So, and of course, people... faith in other countries don't count. They're all just lost souls.
Right.
They really need these white IFBers to come save them.
Well, and it was all about numbers, and that really started bothering me more in college. But anyway, so I went to college, and college kind of started turning me more like against more of the college ways. It wasn't really IFB ways because of how they would do these bus routes, and it was all about numbers. And so they would literally send buses, like hundreds of buses.
There's anywhere like in the heyday, there was almost 500 buses going to Chicago and like the poorer areas like Gary, Indiana, and picking kids up and bringing them into the church. And and like Katie said, it's really just about making the numbers look good. Right. And again, making your cult look attractive.
Yes, but they would do it in such like discriminating ways, I guess. Like you weren't allowed to pick up African Americans.
You couldn't pick up black kids.
Right. You couldn't pick up African Americans with Mexican people. Like you couldn't mix the two because I don't know. Because my bus captain, he was actually, I had 4 little black kids that were supposed to come one Sunday, and he would not pick them up because he's like, no, I'm not going to become a black bus route.
Yeah.
And I was like, why? Like, why can't these kids come? And then he was, you know, it was very racist because...
If you're trying to save souls for Jesus, then what color skin?
Right.
Like, why does the color of their skin matter?
Because,
clearly, you're not actually trying to save souls for Jesus, because if that was true, you would pick up those 4 black kids.
But it was literally like a rule.
It was a rule. It was because it was
and it was because of the gangs, I know, and because there was.
It wasn't because of the
well, that's what they told me.
Right.
No, it was because the church people were complaining that there were too many black kids.
Right. Okay. So anyway, but so that started really making me mad because I was all going out. I mean, we would literally get out there at 10 o'clock in the morning, and they would drop off girls on corners in Chicago randomly. And they would pick them back up at like 5 p.m., you know. So you'd be out there for a whole day. And you would either be knocking on random people's doors or you'd be going to visit kids that were already coming to your bus route. And you'd be out there all day long. And you weren't allowed to like go shopping. You weren't allowed to do anything except for be, you know. Yeah. And it wasn't very good neighborhood. So, and you had to stay with one other girl.
Yeah.
Right. So, like one of my kids' houses, they had like 8 bullet holes in the front door.
Well, I mean, it's Chicago.
Right. Like
it's called Chirac for a reason.
Right.
And it's so like, you know, they know that these are easy, so-called like, again, vulnerable people. A lot of these kids just wanted to get off the streets. Like, and I don't mean like off the streets. I mean like it's a hot day in the middle of summer and a bus captain would bribe you with ice cream if you go to church. And these kids have nothing to do and they're like, okay, we'll go to church. So again, They're poor. They have nothing to do, and someone's offering you free ice cream. And half the time, the parents didn't even know where the kids were.
Right.
Or the parents were working, and the parents were like, "Yes, somebody's watching my kids for a day. I'll take the free daycare." But so again, about boosting numbers. These kids don't know what they're doing. They don't care about your church. They just want to go sit somewhere that's cool, have a good time with their friends, and their parents are just happy that they know that their kids are off at church, right? You send your kid to church, you assume they're safe.
Yeah. So all of that bus route stuff really, and the guys had it worse because they would go out there at 10 o'clock on Saturday and be out until 9 p.m. And then they had to get up at about 4 a.m. on Sunday and go pick up all the kids in Chicago, then take the kids to church, then take the kids home. Okay. And basically they were out till 1 a.m. And then they were supposed to go to college and just magically know everything as far as, have good grades. So anyway, I didn't ever graduate from college. I am still one class short. So, but anyway, so I, after that, me and my husband got married and we moved to another city and we started attending an extreme IFB church. Like when I say extreme, it was very, very extreme.
I think that it was smaller and so it was easier to see the extremism. In a big church, like a big hub, like First Baptist of Hammond, you didn't see the extremism until like stuff like the bus route. Like it was easy for them to hide their extremism. But when you get to the smaller IFB churches, that's where you see like people are nuts. But it's the same people in both places, just when they're bigger crowds.
Plus you're older. And so when you're a kid and you are shielded a little bit from the crazy, and the crazy's still there, but you just don't see it as much as when you're older.
So, but when we first got there, it wasn't as extreme. It might have been that, but maybe I just wasn't listening properly or something. But it kind of subtly just got more and more, just the beliefs were crazy. Like I had to wear nylons to Walmart because I was in the choir. I already had to wear skirts full time and obviously everything else.
They were really hard about those nylons. Like, those are going to cover up your legs.
Well, it was because they said that if a man sees your legs if you have a skirt on, if a man sees your bare legs, he knows that there's only underwear underneath that skirt. So then that's going to cause him to think about you and sin. And so then that's on you.
Oh, yeah. It's always on you.
Sense. So then I'm just like, yeah, that's what my pastor's wife told me. I have it in an email. So anyway, and you couldn't wear nude color.
Yeah.
Nylons. Anyway. So we stayed there for about 3 years, but once we had kids, then it started getting really bad and we started noticing a lot where so the Orlando shooting.
You called me right after this, and we weren't really talking much at this time because I had been out of the IFB for a while. I had come out as gay. I hadn't come out as trans yet. But me and Samantha had just started dating, and Katie called me, and this was like the first time that I was like, maybe she'll wake up. I don't know. So go ahead.
Yeah, because I was very much just brainwashed. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Yeah. But I was brainwashed for longer than you guys. But I don't know. Evan was in there for
You're not actually brainwashed longer than them. You're just 3 years younger than them.
Oh, that's true.
So they've had an extra 3 years to get out of it.
Yeah.
But so it was the Orlando shootings.
Okay, so the Orlando shootings really is when everything started changing because my pastor got up like that next day and started saying how this was a benefit to our country kind of thing. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, because he always would preach it. I would kind of like zone out, because he just bothered me sometimes. So on other issues. But yeah. And I was like, wait, did he just say that? So then I would, and he would say something like that and then just back up and like not say anything else. So then I would ask my husband when we got home, like, did he say, like, did I think what he just said was that, So then that night, because we had Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night church. So then that night, usually on Sunday mornings, he'd keep it mild. But Sunday night and Wednesday night were like the hardcore IFB group.
Which is like, that's normal in IFB. Like, if you want to know what an IFB church is really like, go to the Sunday night or the Wednesday night. Right. Don't go to Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. They're just bullshitting you.
Right. So, but Sunday night, he said something else about the Orlando shooting. And how it was benefiting our country. And a man from the back yelled out, "Burn them all." And I was like, and my husband was sitting on the platform because he was kind of like on staff, I guess, not paid at all. But anyway, so he just gets like beat red in the face, like, what just happened? And I'm waiting for the pastor to be like, get out of here. But he said nothing. Like, just, he acted like it didn't happen. So then I'm like, oh my gosh, what just happened? So then the guy says something else like 2 minutes later, like, shoot them all, or, you know, something like that. And I'm just getting like fuming mad. And we ended up staying there for like 6 more months, which was way too long, but we were so like terrified of leaving.
Yeah.
It was like this weird, such a weird thing. But yeah, things like that started getting said where he would just say very racist things. And he was such a fanboy, Trump. Like every single message was
not in the
vote for
IFB.
Trump, vote for, like he would tell us who to vote for.
Well, they always
common,
did subtly.
yeah.
They always
Yeah.
subtly told us. Or
No,
they would
but
just
he would be like, I don't care what the law is. You guys need to vote for Trump.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, you're not supposed to say, like. But anyway, so then we ended up getting out of that. We went to another somewhat, I mean, it was IFB, but it wasn't as crazy or extreme as that. But when we left that church, the way that they treated us after that was, that's what really like made me be like, okay, I don't like these people. Plus all of the scandals, like how they defended all of these men that raped girls, like, you know, underage girls, and how they're just like, oh no, they're lying, like the girls are lying. And no, like it was just sickening. So that was kind of like my wake up call, is basically all the scandals that came out.
No, so I mean, I'm not going to tell a lot about my story because I've dropped it throughout my episodes, so I guess you'll just have to listen to all 68 episodes. But no, like mine was very similar, obviously, to Katie, you know, growing up, being moved from South Carolina to Indiana, and then like Deanna, going through the school system run by the church. And then the only obviously difference was that, you know, when I was 14, that was the first time that I realized I was attracted to girls, which actually I knew before then. Katie and I were talking earlier about how I got pulled from a Christian school because I was 6 years old and I kissed a girl, and it was a whole scandal.
And he liked it.
And I liked it. I kissed a girl and I liked it.
Sorry, I had to.
But yeah, so, you know, I realized that I was attracted to girls, and I spent a long, long time repressing that. And then when I was 21, 22, I checked myself into our rehab, which practiced gay conversion therapy. And also, I had issues with drinking. It was a lot of stuff. I checked myself into the rehab, and 6 months, 2 weeks after getting out of the rehab, I married a guy because I was going to cure myself through marriage. And then a couple months into it, I realized that I wasn't going to cure myself. And I it's not that I wanted to leave the IFB. When I left, it wasn't like I was like, I'm leaving the IFB. I just knew that I couldn't stay in and be queer. Like, I knew that that wasn't an option for me. So I had to leave. I was just kind of like kicked out. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we all had like each one of us has had different storylines, but it's all the same thing. It's manipulation. It's abuse. It's, you know, like I said, like Katie said, the ridiculous rules of you have to wear nylons whenever you're out in public, you know.
So now that we've heard your story, I'm going to kind of like put two things in. So one is, what is the IFB's perception of women? And also, what are some of the most harmful perceptions you've had to change since leaving? So in the IFB, there's a lot of rules, as you heard Deanna, Katie, and Evan talk about, like women must wear skirts. Let me just go through a couple things that you cannot do in the IFB, and it's not even like perceptions, but women have to wear skirts and obviously be submissive towards men. You cannot drink alcohol. You cannot dance. You cannot listen to music with a drum beat or a rock beat, including Christian contemporary music. You cannot date or hold hands with a man. They believe in courtship. You have to have supervised dates.
We also have to be 6 inches away from the man we're dating.
Yes, 6 inches away. You can't gamble or play with a deck of cards because it could lead to gambling. There's a lot of rules. So again, the question is, what is the IFB's perception of women, and what was hard for you to change when you left?
So, I mean, there's so much that we could go over here, and I'll just keep it brief, I guess. But basically, the IFB's, in my opinion, perception of women is that we are less than. And that's something that is drilled into your head from the moment you hit church nursery. You are less than your male counterparts, your peers, and then also the boys are always better than the girls. And so it creates this very harmful feeling, I guess I should say, and mentality is what I'm looking for. It creates this very bad mentality that makes you feel like you're not worthy and you have no value. And I mean,
you don't.
Right, because you don't there. I mean, and they make it seem like, oh, to be a wife and a mom, that's where you should put your value. But that's not even true based on the teachings that they give us, because being a wife, you're basically doing whatever your husband needs you to do. You're not doing what you need. And then being a mom is also, it's not about you, it's about someone else. And there's a statement they have, an acronym for it's joy. And they're very much, you should be joyful and happy in everything that you do. And joy stands for Jesus, others, and then yourself. And that's how you should live your life, basically, is you should put Jesus first, then others, and yourself last. And always yourself is last. And as a woman in today's world, I mean, yes, a lot of that has happened over years, but in the IFB cult, or cult in general, the one way that they get women to stay is by just pushing them down further and further. I mean, when my mom was trying to leave, she told me she had never written a check before in her life, and she was, 20 some years old, and she had never written a check. Right.
You don't have access, like for most women, they don't have access to their money, or even if they did, like the man still has very much control, for a lot of, and again, a lot of women, there's the threat of like losing their children. Right. Again, and when you come from one of the hubs like we did, you know that there's going to be the power of the church behind your husband if you do try to leave.
Right, and
or
there's
your father.
There's no amount of emotional, physical, or mental abuse that would be on your side, right, as the woman. So I would say one of the most harmful things that has been for me being out of the IFB, that's even carried on through my life today, that I deal with in therapy, is feeling like I'm valuable or I'm worthy. No one told me I was worth anything. No one ever told me I had value. So, that's hard when you finally, someone tells you that you're worth it, that you're worthy. It's hard to even understand what that means, to feel like you're important. Those things, those words mean something completely different in the IFB, and it's hard to learn what they actually mean and how to apply them to your life.
Yeah.
And I would say that, to me, is the most destructive thing that they have done to people, but mainly to women, is to make them feel like they are not worthy and they are not valuable.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to read a portion of this book. I mean, it's like a little couple sentences of what this IFB woman, I mean, she's kind of to the extreme. Yeah, it's actually called Created to Be His Helpmeet by Debbie Pearl.
And if you'd like to read some horror, you can just read their book To Train Up a Child, and that will just give you nightmares for weeks. And that will also tell you how children are treated in the IFB, and again in these cults where they're taught to be beaten from the time that they're born. But back to women.
So this is what they think of women on this. This is her words, not mine. God has clearly told us that not having regular sex is giving Satan an opportunity to tempt married couples. Wife, it is your God-ordained ministry to your husband to be his total enthusiastic sex partner, ready to enjoy him at all times. To do less is a grave error. If you love your husband as God commands, you will always seek to give him pleasure. In doing so, you will fulfill your role as a suitable helper. And she also calls it a sin to show lack of sexual interest in your husband. So that's crazy.
Yeah.
So basically, one statement she also makes in here is the wife serves her husband first, her children second, others next, and herself last.
Right.
And it's very much like women don't matter. Their needs don't matter and all of that. And that's why you have so many women that are depressed or they suppress things and don't process things. But anyway, but one of my things that I did struggle with was this, I think, as far as not doing anything for myself. Mm-hmm. Whereas it was always my kids and my husband first. And it's not that my husband didn't buy into that, but I did. And almost to the point where like, I like putting pepper on food, but my husband hates it. So I wouldn't even put pepper on my own food. And it's like, what? That doesn't even make any sense, right? Mm-hmm. But it's things that you're like, okay, well, he doesn't like that, so then I shouldn't like that. Mm-hmm. And it's not like my husband was telling me to do that, but it's just these thought processes that get banged in your head and all this stuff. But so that's what I've struggled with, is just kind of finding who I actually am, because I've never been my own person ever. Mm-hmm. I went from my dad's house to my husband's house, and yeah.
One thing I should say, I mean, I have been out of the IFB for, I don't know, 12, 13 years now, and I was not married in it. I wasn't in a relationship with my husband in it. I got out when I was 19, so, I should not or wouldn't have thought that I would have feelings like this. But that's what a cult does, is they get it in deep. And so when I got married, I went into a massive depression and had crazy anxiety because I had to work full time and I couldn't keep my house clean. I couldn't do all the laundry. I couldn't also make the dinner and keep the dishes clean without feeling, I just couldn't do it. And I was completely depressed because of it. And it just came out. It was like a switch flipped in my brain, that now suddenly I'm supposed to act a certain way and do things a certain way. And it's just because it was in there so deep. And I mean, struggling with these things even to today, I mean, I've been out for so long, but they're in deep. And until you deal with them, obviously, then you kind of keep them buried because it's hard. But that's what brainwashing and that's what a cult does, is they get it in deep, and they especially do it towards the women more. I feel like, my own personal opinion, I feel like they do it more to the women than to the men.
Yeah.
Do you have anything?
I mean, obviously, for me, the biggest, as far as women, I agree. Everything my sister said, absolutely 100%. And then the only other perception, has been the obviously with queer people and myself, and not even realizing, I didn't realize how long I was not okay with myself. I remember being out and like being proud, like on my social media, and if you asked me a question, but then I remember one day sitting at a stoplight and breaking down crying because I realized that I was not okay with the fact that I was queer. And I hated myself, and I hate a lot. It's really hard for these kids that leave, and they live in this self-hatred, and they, even no matter how loud and proud they are, in the back of their mind, there's still something that says there must be something wrong with you. If there wasn't anything wrong with you, you'd be normal. They still have that thinking of you. It would be normal if you just like the opposite sex, if you just weren't in the wrong body. What kind of crazy person is trans? You must be crazy if you're trans. And so these harmful thoughts get in their mind, and they stay in their mind. And so it took a lot of time, and it took a lot of therapy and working and learning to love myself. That took a lot of work. It wasn't just something that I walked away and it flipped off. And so if you come from one of these environments, you have trauma, you need to treat that trauma. That means you need to put work into it. And this podcast is a nice way to, learn about yourself, but you need to do some one-on-one work. You really do. That's another thing in the IFB that they taught us. There's no such thing as mental illness. There's no such thing as therapy. Therapy was going to church and listening to your pastor. So it's like when my sister talked about when my dad died, we were never given any kind of therapy for that. When Deanna was never given any kind of child, therapy for the trauma of the divorce. There was nothing like that. You're just supposed to buck up and move on, and those scars, and then you just had more abuse on top of those scars.
So piggybacking off of that, what are some beliefs you've changed since leaving? Do you have any beliefs that you had in the IFB that have now changed?
I'll just start by saying this is Deanna. I would say for me personally, the biggest one is God and my non-belief in God, and my realization of just kind of the myth of that, of what everything I was taught, creation, all of those things. Like, I've totally changed my belief on that aspect of it, and don't believe in God. And also, obviously we were taught very much, that about gay and queer people, trans, like everything, LGBTQ, whatever, all of those, that all of it was wrong. And I remember feeling that way even into an adult, being an adult and being married, and then realizing that it's not my job, one, to decide how someone lives their life. And I very much live you be you. And it's definitely not something that the IFB is about at all. And I definitely have kind of taken that on, and I try to be as supportive as possible of everyone in my family, no matter what, their belief is, because it's not my job as a person, as a human on this earth. It is not my job to decide how you live your life. So you do you. And that's probably the biggest thing that changed, is that belief.
This is Katie. I do still believe in God. My perception of God has changed. Whenever I was in the extremist church, it was more like God was like, he was going to strike you dead, or, strike your house. So we were taught, like, if you had a flat tire, you weren't giving enough money to the church. Like, right. That's what God was doing to you.
Every little thing wrong in your life was God being like, hey, you need to give more.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And that was it's so messed up. But, and it's like, now what I've learned when I've been to multiple churches now, and just community Christian churches, and all types, kind of searching for the right place for me and my family. But what I have found is that God, I don't know, the God that I believe in is not like that. He is loving. They never talked about God's love in that other church. And so yeah, and I'm like, God's not like that. Yes, everybody can view God in different ways, but the way that I do is God is loving, and like, if he wasn't, why did he die on the cross, kind of thing. Like, there is a loving God, and I believe that God loves gays, because they didn't believe in that extremist church. They didn't believe that, like, you could go to heaven if you were gay, kind of thing. Which is a whole nother topic, but like, I obviously believe, yeah. Anyway, so I still believe in God, and I still go to church. I do not go to Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. I go to pretty much a Sunday morning service, and my kids love church, and it's just a part of our life, and it's very good for us. But my perception of God has changed. And we were raised to wear skirts and all the nylons and stuff. I haven't worn nylons in years and years. And then I wear pants now. Oh, it was a big deal.
Jezebel.
We went shopping for pants since we've been here, and I was looking. I was like, "Man, you have a body for pants.
She does.
Like you look so good in pants." Which is weird, I'm sure, for the clerk listening to us. Like, what the hell is going on?
Well, I've only been out of the crazy IFB for less than a year. I mean, it's probably coming up on a year, but. So I'm like, I don't know how to buy pants. There's so many things, So, but, there's some things that I've changed my mind on about the little nitty gritty things. But as far as God goes,
It's just shifting.
it's just a different, I don't believe in that crazy God.
Angry God, manipulative God, the God that is just used by a cult to control people. That's not a God. It's a man saying this is God. It's not my fault, but God has said that you all have to give me all your money, and also you have to have sex with me.
It's a pastor who's turned into a prophet, right?
Right.
And that's not a pastor. So.
Yep.
Yeah. So we're coming to the end now. We're wrapping it up. We just got 2 more questions. Go ahead, honey.
Are there any words of comfort or encouragement you have for survivors of the IFB who are queer? And what are your final thoughts you would like to leave to any survivors of a cult?
I'll just say, to survivors of a cult, I want to say it's worth it. It's hard. And for however long you were in, for me, it was 19 years. So sometimes I have to give myself a little bit of space and realize that I was in for 19 years and there's 19 years worth of teachings. And so I'm not going to just be over it. Even though I've been out for 10, 11 years, it's not just over it.
19 years of trauma and teaching.
Right,
so
trauma for
on
sure.
top of that.
Right. But it's definitely worth it. It's been the most freeing experience I've ever had. Obviously. But it's freeing. It's like taking a deep breath on a cool fall day. I know that sounds silly, but it definitely is that. I mean, it's so worth it. And there's never, in my opinion, there's never reason to go back to that type of dominating experience. Yeah. And to queer individuals, this is I want to say I'm sorry. Like I'm sorry that if your families treat you in the way they do. I wish that, I could be your sibling and be there for you, because there's something about family supporting you, no matter what phase of life you're in. But I feel like that especially, so I'm sorry that your family, maybe has tossed you aside or doesn't speak to you. I'd say it gets better, but I don't know. I'm not queer. And so I don't know from personally that your family will talk to you. I don't know, but I could say find someone who is supportive of you. Find someone and find your new family. Family doesn't always have to be blood. Family is your village, your people surrounding you. And those are the people that are going to matter in the long run.
Yeah.
What I first to anybody that is queer, for a long time I had a misconception. Mm-hmm. Is that the word I want? A misconception on so I believed what I was taught. Yeah. I didn't have my own feelings or own thoughts about it. And I really didn't until Evan came out as trans. Mm-hmm. then I was like, oh, I probably need to like think about this like for myself.
Right.
And I mean, and it took me, I mean, there was like months of just thinking and just reading up about it, more like learning, I guess. And then I would always read Evan's posts on Facebook because they're very like the whole, all of your outfits and stuff. I was like, oh, there's like history and, you know, all that stuff. So, but anyway, so I had to really learn. And I think it was just very much like I had no knowledge of the subject. So then I was just like, nope, I don't believe that, you know? Yeah. And, but I'm like me and Evan don't agree on everything and we don't have to, but I also know that like, if you do believe in God, because there are some queer that believe in God.
They're queer people of faith. Yes.
Yes, of course. But yeah, I just want to tell you that not all Christians are psychos and mean and awful and will hate you kind of thing. Yes, there are a lot that do. And that's just awful. But basically that, you know, God is loving. But basically that it's not everybody believes that's like, I know that the crazy people are usually the loudest, but don't buy into, like, I know that there are crazy people, but there's not everybody is like that. And, what was I saying?
And then do you have
What was the
anything
other question?
for just cult survivors in general, like some quick words of advice to them if you're leaving a cult or if you're left a cult and you're still struggling?
Oh, it is getting out is so good for you and so freeing. I mean, it is scary at first, but it's like now that I've been out for less than a year, it's been the most like rewarding year. Me and my husband are, you know, doing this together kind of thing, trying to figure out what we believe. And now it's like we kind of will come to something and say, oh, well, we need to like actually think of that for ourselves. And it's nice, you know, and there's a lot of times we're like, we don't really know what we believe about that. So let's try it and we'll see, you know? So it's very freeing because you kind of are finding like your whole new self and it's awesome. And it's an awesome experience. So I would just say, do it. Just take the plunge and get out and do it. And you will see the rewards in, you know, as time goes on.
Yeah. And what I would say, so to those who are queer, it does get better. It just looks different. So whatever conception you have in your mind of how it's going to look, it might not look that way. You might not end up, your family might come around and your family might not come around. Your spouse may come with you, your spouse may not come with you. Whatever it is, it does get better. It absolutely gets better. But the perception that you have, you might not have to let that go. You might have to let go of your expectations and just let yourself heal how you heal. And again, going back to do the work. Read books, Brene Brown's books, any of her books, but especially Gifts of Imperfection. Listen to some healthy podcasts. If you can go to therapy, go to therapy. If you can go to free group therapy, go to free group therapy. If you just need to be online and be in a support group, you need to reach out. You need to get help. And of course, you're always welcome to message me and Paul. We get messages every single week from people all over the world, and we always respond. If you've sent us a message and we haven't responded, send it again because it just got put in the wrong folder or something happened. We respond to people all the time. But again, it will get better. You have to take time, and that's what's painful, is waiting for wounds to heal. Because if you just left, if you're 6 months out, if you're a year out, your wounds are still going to be fresh. And that applies to any survivor, you know, not just if you're queer. If you're a survivor of a cult and you're just trying to get through the next day, again, reach out, let yourself build community. It's hard after the community that you've had has turned its back on you and you were so sure and certain that like this is what you wanted to do for your life, with your life, and now everything seems stripped away. It's hard to reach out and let yourself build community again. But you look like you have something to say.
Yeah.
What?
If you're a family member of someone that is queer, do not turn your back on them or cut them off like, oh, they don't believe the same way I do. Well, I'm just going to cut them off. But that's not family.
No.
Like you are not a family member. And, you know, my parents did that with Evan. And I think that was one of those moments where I was like, what just happened? Because then I was like sobbing, like, why would they do that to Evan? It doesn't make sense. No. So if you're a family member, you don't have to agree with every little decision that your brother or sister or whoever does. You don't have to, you know, me and Evan don't agree on everything, but both of us would do anything for the other person, and we would never stop a relationship.
That's true.
It doesn't make sense.
But there's also a lot of healthy respect between us, because if we don't agree, there's still respect. There's still boundaries. We have boundaries, and we don't violate those.
Well, we went through a period of time when you first came out, where we both were trying to change each other. Yeah. You wanted me to
leave the IFB.
Yes, leave the IFB. Yeah. But I also wanted you to come back and get married to crazy guy. Yeah. So, you know, like we were trying to change each other for years, and that's why we didn't have a good relationship. We didn't respect each other's decisions. Mm-hmm. So like I respect Evan as a transgender man, and he respects me as a Christian. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But so that's what I mean. Like you don't have to agree on everything. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be, you know, like we're probably totally different in like so many ways, but we are so close too.
You just need to have empathy.
Empathy, yeah.
Right.
And respect. Back to respect. Yeah, because but if your family member is not respecting you, you don't have to put yourself through that. You don't owe them anything. Right. But Katie's right. It took us a long time to figure out what that was and what that looked like for us. And so for a long time we didn't have a relationship. You know, but if you're from a cult, or, you know, just hang in there, give yourself time, reach out, get help. And we've already gone a little longer than usual, so we're going to wrap this up. Honey, do you have anything to say?
If you happen to be on YouTube tonight, type in Jack Schaap, SCHAAP, Rod, ROD.
Or you can do Polish Shaft.
Or Polish Shaft. And you will see the church that Evan, Katie, and Deanna grew up in a sermon to make you realize what a cult really is. And with that, we say, have a good day, stay queer, and don't
get a lobotomy.
Get a circumcision if you don't want one.
No. Don't let Deanna say the word. But before I do that, I am going to plug a reference. Check out The Shooting Salvationists. It is a book about the history of the IFB if you want to know more. And stay queer.
And don't get a lobotomy.
Yes. Our little suckling sapphis and our... Oh my God, Paul's going to be so mad. Paul, don't be mad. Our suckling sapphis. Deanna, help me. Our
allied hookers.
And our degenerate homocrats have some good sodomy tonight. What are you looking at me for?
Those are weird things to say.
Because you don't listen. That's the problem.
I don't listen to the end.
If you don't listen to the episodes, you don't get it. So for those of you who are allied, oh my God. So stay queer. Don't get a lobotomy. Our little suckling sapphis, our allied hookers.
Oh, maybe it's just Christian.
I'm sorry, guys. Oh, I don't know, guys. You know what?
It's more Paul your boss.
This is why Paul's not allowed to go away on vacation. But we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye. Sorry, Paul.